Okay, I welcome you to the post podcast run by PM Strategist. My name is Muhammad Aslam Mirza. Assalamu alaikum. You are attending this podcast run by PM Strategists for the benefits and understanding of the business managers and businesses so that they can solve and have the different perspectives on the business um, challenges and business complexities. Um, Today we are lucky to have Dr. Ross Reid with us, who is going to share his knowledge and experience for the managing business complexities. Before I go into details, uh, let me share with you the areas which is important for the businesses and for the understanding of the business managers and businesses together. So we are going to talk about the introduction to PM strategies very shortly, in briefly in the manner so that you know what PM strategies corner provides the services, and thereafter we will also share with you the purpose of strategy corner podcast, why this is being run and how it is going to help the business managers and the businesses. Uh, with the insightful views and experience of the speaker. And luckily, we have Dr. Ross Wirth with us, who is going to share his experience, knowledge, and exposure for managing businesses to move in the directions they want. Then finally, I'm going to bring to your understanding what PM Strategist Corner essentially helps the businesses in what manner and how. So, that way, let me proceed further and to bring you the understanding of the purpose of this podcast. This podcast is essentially to bring you the different perspectives of the experts who are managing and successfully have been moving their businesses or helping the businesses to move in their desired directions so that their experience and their exposures are captured, and that learning can help the businesses and business managers together. So that is the basic purpose. And for that, we are going to talk about and find out how best the business complexities can be taken care of in the present time, particularly where the AI is taking the lead in every direction and in every way. So luckily, Dr. Ross has got very good exposure to AI, and he's going to share his knowledge in that area as well. Uh, there, as I said earlier, that my name is Muhammad Aslam Mirza. I am the founder and CEO of PM Strategist Corner, who are making arrangements to present you this podcast to help businesses and business managers and professionals together. Uh, I will only invite your attention to the four books in the market written by me. Those are under the theme of Aura. Aura is AURA, and this is written on project management and leadership challenges. So, in Aura, R goes for applying project management principles for organizational transformation. U goes for understanding human factors and workplace environment. R goes for respecting diversity, building team, meaningfulness, and growing to leadership. Again, R that goes for agility in project management and collaboration. So all these four areas are the basic requirements for the business managers and the professionals who are assigned a project or working on a project to bring the quality of work and to move the towards the desired outcome of the project. So that is what the purpose of these books are, and it helps businesses. So these are books. These books are available on Amazon, and you can take a look. Uh, Now, before I go to the introduction of Dr. Ross, uh, he has very extensive exposure to business industry and to teaching aspects. He has been uh, um, um, managing the challenges and the requirements of the business and professionals to move in their required strategic directions. I may not be I may not successfully bring his complete introduction because such a learned person have got so much of vast area of exposures and experience. So I may not justify to bring all his knowledge and experience to your attention. So I will request Dr. Ross to please briefly share your exposure and experience for the interest of the prospective participants. Dr. Ross, please.
I'm in my third career now. My first career was 30 years in international oil and gas, working really across the organization, doing everything from IT to HR, supply and distribution. A lot of the positions were different planning, both operational planning and strategic planning. If you would put anything that would be a dominant trend, most of it would be what we called special projects, which were really internal projects for change. That's where I really got my start in organizational change and leadership. I went on to get a doctorate in leadership organizational change. My second career took me into academia, first as a professor of business administration, later as the dean of the College of Business. I've since moved on and primarily work as hosting the Futocracy network, where we bring together people in leadership and organizational change to talk about how organizations are evolving, how change itself is evolving, and moving past the bureaucratic industrial era into new ways of working. This is where AI comes in as a key cornerstone, not only in how business is operating, but also how we start to think about businesses and the human-machine integration.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ross. You have such an extensive exposure to different knowledge and businesses. Naturally, it's very difficult to bring that into a short form and to bring to the understanding, definitely. But your reference is there on the LinkedIn. If somebody is interested, one can go there and find out what are your exposures and how best you can be helpful in the different challenges. Thank you very much, Dr. Ross. Now, let's move on into the subject of today's podcast, where the managing business complexities is the basic topic which we want to go into and to delve into the area of the challenges and to find out from Dr. Ross how best he will be helping us and helping business managers and helping businesses to move on. Before I request Dr. Ross to come up with his solutions and with his recommendations with the application of AI, let me bring briefly the understanding of complexities. I mean, these complexities are brought down into four distinctive areas, which I believe you will agree with me that these are external, because those things which are happening in the external area of the businesses, of the organizations, are the areas where organizations have got no control. And in the present time, this has gone to a level where it is said that businesses are now required to face the virtual ambiguity. And this ambiguity is moving so fast that businesses are under pressure to manage their advancements and their systems to face those challenges. And I will not go into the details of the external challenges; those are there. Of course, you are conversant with that. But broadly, the areas are listed down up here. In the internal arena, the challenges are within the control, are within the organizations, but they have to manage those challenges, and they have to make sure that those areas are built up to face the external challenge, not only, but also to help move businesses to their required strategic directions. So, and for that, they need to manage their operational systems and operational capability, and because that is the area where the businesses move on with the requirement and with the satisfaction to their customers. And for that, they need to develop their strategic advancements, and that strategic advancements is, again, have got their own challenges, and those challenges needs to be met and needs to be satisfied before you are able to look into advancements. So all these four areas together brings complexities, and these complexities have got to met with in an effective manner so that organizations can move on and manage their businesses to satisfy the need and expectations of their customers. So let's understand and let's listen to our guest of the day, Dr. Ross Wirth, what he suggests, how to move on and how to manage the things. With this, I will request Dr. Ross with the first question, that what he feels that the organizations have been able to move on with the under his advice, wherever he have been involved, that organizations were able to move on and manage these challenges in an effective manner. Dr. Ross, please.
The challenge here is that there's really so many areas that are involved. You've got, I think, 32 that was just listed on this one slide itself. And if you get down into it, you can probably add at least double that number because of the number of minor variations of how these are really impacting organizations today. While we can spend probably several hours on each of these, I think this gets into the broader issue itself of how do we deal with complexity in general versus trying to deal with individual problems that arise that would be listed in this information here. So, for example, we can address each of these within the traditional hierarchy of the way we've been doing business in industrial era for the last 100 years. The challenge there, though, is that we're now dealing with change at a more rapid rate. And the way we've organized in the past was basically built around controlling the people doing the work. And that's a key issue here, in that the entire organization, performance management, and the way we lead those projects and the operations and even the strategy is all built around a traditional way of dealing with change as a disruptive that doesn't happen all the time but is episodic. So, for example, all of our change models from the industrial era are dealing with a specific problem, and once that is put into place, then we go back to the expectation of a stable organization again. Okay, as you can see from this list, the stability is no longer there. There is too many complexities coming from too many directions at one time, and that creates a problem with our organization design itself. If we design an organization for stability and change as being periodic, then we have to figure out how to cycle through that periodic change quicker. The problem is that we are cycling through so many changes now that it's continuous. It is no longer episodic. It is one change on top of another. And when you take a look at this list alone, the organizations are dealing with all of these all the time, which is really emblematic then of the challenge we have itself. How do we deal with so many changes occurring simultaneously? I've been working on this problem for the last 6-7 years with another professor, and we've come to the conclusion that the problem isn't necessarily dealing with the complexities or the change itself, but the interaction of how we design our organization for stability, at the same time expecting them to be resilient to change, and being able to make decisions in an agile manner. This then requires really to step back and rethink of how we organize itself and what organizations are really designed to do. This gets into a series of fundamental challenges. At the same time, there are a number of pioneering organizations that are working with new ways of operating. They're dealing with a network organization. They're breaking out how you do the delegation of authority. They're rethinking of how decisions are made itself. At the same time that you've got the pressures on the organization as illustrated by the complexities here, you also have a younger workforce that is coming into the workplace with newer expectations. They have been really raised within the internet era and increasingly are very fluent in AI on a personal basis. They're thinking different than my generation has been taught over the years, and they come in with more expectations on being given a voice in the organization much quicker than we would have expected in the past as someone moves up the organization chart. To them, the organization chart is really a hindrance to them having a voice. And they also want to not only have a voice, but also be able to move quicker than a traditional organization allows. Okay. This requires a new way of them thinking about organizations and how they are structured. Okay. That is really a mindset change that requires a rethinking of how we structure work, how we control the work. And the control issue is really embedded deeply into organizational hierarchies. That control is really the delegation of authority for decision making. Someone once said that organizations are decision factories, which is probably a true description, and that everything in organization requires some decision, keep it moving or to change it. And how we make those decisions then, it really a driving mechanism of how quickly those organizations can adapt to change. And these issues of complexity then can be resolved and dealt with. We need to figure out how to delegate that authority, but at the same time not losing control. That's the fear. Hierarchy as a control, but the control with people doing the work, not necessarily the control of the work. When you look at how organizations that are on the pioneering area of new ways of working, they really become more focused on controlling the work processes, and in particular, how the work is aligned to purpose. It's a critical element in that too often times purpose is assumed to be there. And a lot of times the performance management systems, the purpose is defined and people are not aligned themselves. And that's where the hierarchy then comes in, is to make those changes. But how do you do that when the hierarchy is distributed to very flat or to network? This gets into a number of different ways of operating. Let me take a little break at this point because I've laid out a lot of issues here. And let me open it up to your question then. Where do you want to go with the conversation? Because we can take it in different directions. at this point.
Okay. In fact, this essentially is required that whatever have been done earlier, as you said, that control is the basic requirements. In that perspective, here essentially I understand that controls of the resources, not human being, because human beings, if you control them in an effective manner, then you may not be able to capture their real potential of performance. So the basic point here is that how you think the advancements was really successful in your past, in the recent past, I would say, because that was the most challenging with the COVID in place and COVID in position. So there, it was really important to find out how best to move on and how best to manage the businesses and stay in business, because that was the real challenge. So I would request you to elaborate a little bit that how would you differentiate the control?
Okay. You mentioned control of resources, but I think it goes deeper than that. It's the control of decision making, because it's those decisions that then control how resources are acquired or used. Those decisions also involve how people are really selected, trained, utilized, and involved in the decision-making process itself. When you look at the control mechanism itself, traditional hierarchies do it through an explicit delegation of authority. And that authority is revolving around the decisions that are capable. Some organizations, structures such as a sociocracy or holacracy, builds in a specific decision-making process. Other organizations delegate specific types of decisions that can be made at lower levels. So, for example, when I was in international oil and gas, we had a structured system of authority that went from the top of the organization down to the very lowest level organization of what each level or position could do. It was a commitment level and an authorization level. And this is where you oftentimes got into capital and operation expenditures, which got back to your point on controlling resources. But as it got down, it also ran into a problem in that the delegation of authority then assumed you knew what needed to be delegated and the framework for that delegation. Where the complexity challenges that is it comes up with new variations that don't fit a standard delegation framework. Okay, that's what slows the decision-making process down, because if it's not explicit in its delegation, then it has to go to a higher level for clarification or decision-making at a higher level. And oftentimes what ends up happening then is the decision is moved back up the organization because the framework for it being delegated is not sufficient. And as it moves back up the organization, it moves more distant from the people who have knowledge of the problem itself. So you run into a problem then of not having a clear delegation for authority. And the people who have that authority then need to either figure out a new framework for a delegation to handle this level of complexity, or then has to go through a series of information acquisition meetings to find out what the people who are facing the problem know, and then bring them into decision-making process itself, with the decision still remaining at a higher level than it needs to be done. So you then have a problem with a decision model where the decisions are either delegated or they're made higher in the organization. So you question then, because how can you delegate that decision making more dynamically? Okay. What some organizations have since done is they've put in a broader delegation of authority with a different way of making decisions. So, for example, a consent decision model is that lower levels of the organization can be really empowered to make a decision if they touch base with all stakeholders and gain their consent. This is not consensus. Consensus is ultimate veto power, where anyone can effectively say no and stop a decision. The consent process brings in all stakeholders and asks them, do you agree with this decision? And if not, why? Okay. This gives power to everyone to have a voice in the decision-making process, but only to the extent that they disagree and they're able to voice a disagreement in a rational manner. Okay. The people that are then facing the problem then have the responsibility to recognize that dissent and either address it with a modification of the decision or determine that it is insufficient as a reason and then give a counter argument. This then gives into a dynamic decision-making process where people who have concerns have a responsibility to address those concerns, but also gets into a dialogue of why the decision is insufficient or needs to be modified. This then becomes a more dynamic decision-making process where the people who have knowledge are involved with the decision, but is also then needed to tie into purpose alignment. Okay? Because the decision-making process itself has a potential of going into anarchy, going off the rails. Okay. By having it purpose aligned, though, that then creates an internal tension. And that tension is a soft form of control. A hierarchy is a hard control with a delegation framework. A tension then between purpose and decisions then requires those decisions to be aligned with the purpose. Okay. The challenge then is, how do you get that type of alignment? Okay. Within a traditional hierarchy, that really doesn't exist because it's the framework of the delegation of authority that is really creating that tension in purpose. But the purpose is really not necessarily a purpose alignment as much as a delegation of authority. Okay. What some organizations have gone to for a more rapid decision-making process is a purpose alignment function that is a cross-organization team that is really in place to really continuously stress and clarify the purpose and how that purpose is distributed across the network of operations, and also to identify where decisions are not being made. The purpose alignment function is not to make the decisions as much as it is to see that decisions are in fact being made by people who need to be involved. To the extent that an impasse is created, the purpose alignment team can come in to clarify the purpose and the alignment and possibly bring in other stakeholders that need to be involved in the decision itself, such that you have a dynamic decision-making process that is purpose-focused, driven by the stakeholders that are impacted and knowledgeable about the decision, and overseen by a purpose alignment that sees that the decision-making process continues dynamically without having to go up to a higher level of authority per se, even though a governance level of setting strategy and how that strategy is communicated to purpose then also becomes part of that process. So it's really a new way of dynamically thinking about how organizations work, separate from the siloed organization that comes out of a delegation of authority.
Great, great. Dr. Ross, you have very beautifully explained, and I really love that. You essentially means what I understood is controls. You are essentially concerned with the systems and the process put in place for the advancements of the businesses in the required directions. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, great. So let me go to the next question, and the next question is, what will you propose to the present time challenges for the business managers and businesses to move on? That is the basic requirement in the present time, because in the present time, mostly we are faced with the AI challenges in addition to all other complexities which are already getting worse with every passing day. So what is your proposal for the businesses to move on in the present time?
Okay. There's a number of constraints on moving in this direction. There's actually, you see, I've got 6 specific constraints. The first is really the legacy mindset of an industrial era. That is probably the largest constraint because we are really limited by the paradigm that we carry around in our head of how things operate. What I just laid out is a new paradigm of operation that someone who is spending their entire life and is comfortable with controlling people, that's a challenge to them because it becomes control more at a team level than it is at an organizational level, and how those teams then operate. So you've got a mindset change that stability needs to be treated not as an end result, but something that is about through adaptation itself. That the constraint then is how we think about stability. And we have to be a little bit more open to controversy itself, and that conflict becomes part of a normal part of doing business, but it's a controlling, well, I hate to use controlling there. It's really a dynamic conflict to resolve issues and move forward. Okay. The second constraint we really face is a bureaucratic structure itself. How do you move from a organization of chart and the delegation of authority to a networked organization? When you take a look at the pioneering organizations that are using a network structure right now, most of them organize that way as a startup, where the founders had that as a vision. They wanted to operate differently. Or it came from an existential challenge. They were about to go into a death spiral, and everybody saw the necessity of having to do things dramatically different. Okay. Those are both the extremes of life and death of an organizational life cycle. The challenge is that middle, the mature organization that has an embedded bureaucracy in place that then has to go to new ways of operating. That is a big challenge. And an organization to watch right now is Bayer Pharmaceutical, because the CEO of that organization is leading Bayer through this process. It's a major step. Okay. Where I would probably start is really from the decision-making process itself, using a consent process. Okay. you can use a consent process within the delegation of authority. So, have teams start to operate with a consent process for decision making, and where they run into problems, then address that within the hierarchy. As that then starts to operate well at a team level, you can start using that consent process at cross-organization problems. As the organization then becomes more familiar with the decision-making process by consent, the need for really the hierarchy goes away. And once the need for the hierarchy goes away, then you can start to think about how the business operates as a network. Because the hierarchy is really only for decision making to connect those silos. If you're able to operate across the organization with the consent decision making process, the hierarchy and the silos really start to collapse itself, and you're able to start to think about business as work processes, not decision processes that are embedded in the hierarchy. So again, that's basically kind of undermining the need for the bureaucracy through the decision making and the work processes themselves. Okay. Traditionally, change is also managed as a project. Okay. When you start getting into a dynamic decision-making process, change becomes more routine and is dressed across the organization. And to the extent that you run into problems managing a portfolio of change, that then can be handled dynamically also, because that becomes a problem in and of itself. And if you have the issue of change overload or change conflicts, you just deal that with as yet another decision. It doesn't need to be managed at the top side itself. Okay. The fourth issue is really psychological safety. This issue is probably one of the bigger issues, in that people have some safety being able to say, that's not my job, and bounce it up the organization. To the extent that the decision making is really more distributed across the organization, people may face some risk there, in that they're having to do things that they're not necessarily trained to do right now. It becomes an issue of become more vulnerable, and the consent process requires them to challenge and not necessarily hide in the shadows. This is a problem that people will have to get comfortable with, in that you're no longer operating with a power structure. Power is distributed, but at the same time, people are expected to accept some of that power in the way the organization operates. This can be a problem for some people, and will have to be addressed. The issue of shared purpose. The biggest problem I've had in many situations in the past really got back to lack of a shared purpose. So, for example, one time I was in HR, and I was tasked with coming up with a new performance management system with bonuses. And I easily put together a cross-organization team to evaluate the current bonus system and to improve it. I thought it was going to be an easy process. Turned out to be a very difficult process, because once we got the people together, we had a lack of clear purpose. Everyone understood their piece of the organization, but they lacked how it worked across the organization. So we spent probably 90% of our time figuring out how the company really operates, and what the really overall purpose was, and how those purposes integrated. And once we figured that out, then bonus system became rather obvious, because we now had a common understanding of the organization purpose. So again, this is a challenge, because the hierarchy really hides that purpose, because purpose is pushed down, and people understand their purpose within their piece of the organization, but they don't have the view of how it really works across the organization. That's a challenge. The risk also is an issue that needs to be managed differently. Risk is often managed as a expected probability, and it runs into some problems, though, in that a low risk, high impact can still happen. And to the extent that it happens, it's a major problem. Okay? In which case, when we delegate decision-making authority, we also have to have in place a mechanism for people to do the job. Okay? People have to become more entrepreneurial in their thinking. And to this, then, it's not only the delegation of authority and decision-making process that needs to be impacted, is how people need to be operating within a principles of effectuation. Okay, effectuation is a study of successful entrepreneurs. What do they do different that unsuccessful entrepreneurs fail to do? And part of it gets into how they focus on work, they keep moving, but it's also how they view risk itself. Risk is not viewed as a probability and expected value. Risk is viewed as what is the greatest risk I can take and afford if the worst case happens. This is a different view of risk, in that if the decision that I am making goes wrong, can I rebound successfully from it, or can I catch it going wrong in time to create great negative impact itself? If I can't accept that risk, then do I not make the decision, or do I partner with others to spread the risk? It's a different way of thinking about how individuals operate at an entrepreneurial level versus a more structured doing as I'm told to do approach. So that's one of the constraints also of not only is it the decision-making process, it's how the hierarchy collapses with a different decision-making approach, but then also how to empower people and give them the tools, and the tool being primarily the different principles of effectuation that allow them to take action without creating dangerous risk situations itself.
Very right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ross. You have very extensively explained how best to make approach in the present time challenges. Well, it's beautiful, beautiful. Your approach is really worth looking into it. And I would say that businesses can really have the benefits of this learning. Thank you very much, Dr. Ross. Let me move on. I think I do not have more questions to ask, because then we can continue sitting all the day. And of course, that's not the purpose. So let me take a few minutes to explain what project PM Strategist Corner offers services. Here it is listed down that diagnostic assessment of gaps in strategy and execution, strategy alignment and discipline strategy execution is carried out. In the present time, when we are looking into moving toward desired strategy, the gap analysis is the basic requirements, and discipline strategy execution is the need of the time. So that PM strategists can help out the businesses and professionals to work on those areas. The second area is PMO functions. PMO essentially is an old idea, but put it into practice with the application of project management. So with the application of project management, this idea is again gaining interest because in the present time you need an independent center who can be watchful in the advancements of the change, in the advancements of the requirements for moving. So PMO, if you have the PMO in house, PM strategists can help you in building the competence. If not, then PM strategists can provide you those services. So in both way, the need of the PMO can be served, and it is served with the center of excellence. The third area is change management, which is the basic need of the present time, because change is taking place every corner, and for that you need to develop the business, the change muscles, and to help the businesses to move on with the change in the relevant point in time. So there, of course, the requirement is to build supportive culture, because without having supportive culture, you cannot change, you cannot move on with the changing requirements. So there, PM Strategist Corner can help you and help the businesses to move on. The fourth area is leadership development. Essentially, in the present time, the most things are dependent on the leadership, because the leadership is the pivotal factor which helps organizations to move towards their desired goals and desired outcomes. So the building leadership is again needs training, needs understanding, and needs mindset. So that mindset can be developed and can be made up with the systems and processes in place. So there, PM strategies can be helpful for you to move on. The further on, the most important area is the training, because without having proper training for the reskilling and reskilling, you cannot meet the need and expectations of the present time. So there, the diagnostic assessment of the requirements for the need for the requirements for the change and for the reskilling, upskilling of the teams, that their PM strategies can help you. Enhancing the communication and collaboration, because without having effective communication, the organizations cannot move effectively and collectively. You see, the basic requirement is to move and help advancements towards desired goals collectively. And that happens only when there is strong communication systems. So that communication systems can be helped out by PM strategists. Driving innovation and creativity. Now, the creativity and innovation is not reserved for few personnel or few departments. It is supposed to be carried out by every team member at every level. So that innovation and creativity, you need that mindset and you need that system. There, the PM strategies can help you. Skills. Strategic thinking is a mindset, and that needs to be developed all along the organization, so that you are able to create a collective advancements to your desired goals and desired strategic directions. So that happens only when you have that mindset and you have that problem solving skills among the teams and in the teams. So these are the areas where PM strategies can help you effectively to move on to your desired outcomes. Finally, with this, I would say thank you very much for your attention, for your patience, and listening to us, and particularly to Dr. Ross. And if you have interest developed for understanding what the PMO Center of Excellence can bring to you, here is the link available. You can reach out for the value propositions demonstration. This can be done. The second area is training. I mean, you can get the in-house training, and you can get the training support from the link which is provided here. Further on, the podcasts are uploaded on YouTube channel, and that channel link is provided here. Take a note of it. If you need to learn more about the services and the requirements for the advancements, you can reach out. The link is here. Before I close down, let me go back to Dr. Ross. If there is anything finally he wants to share with the participants. Dr. Ross, please.
No, it's just that we're facing a new future of work. What's worked in the past is no longer working because we can't cycle through it quick enough. The decision making can't be done within a structured bureaucratic hierarchy. We need to be able to have decision agility, but also some resilience to the amount